The world is drowning in crime. From the back alleys of New York to the jungles of Colombia, from Russian prisons to Asian ports, organized crime has no borders. There are thousands of gangs, clans, and crews, but only a handful have risen above the rest. These aren't just street thugs. These are armies, corporations, invisible governments that make billions, control politicians, and leave trails of blood across continents. You've heard the legends, the Mafia, the Yakuza, the cartels. But do you really know who runs the underworld today? In this video, we're pulling back the curtain. Forget the Hollywood myths. Forget the romanticized mobsters with fancy suits. We're talking about the real monsters, the ones so powerful, entire nations fear their name. Tonight, you'll find out which criminal empires truly dominate our planet. This is the top 10 most dangerous crime organizations in the world. Number 10. Los Zetas. When you hear that name in Mexico, it doesn't sound like just another cartel. It sounds like war. Los Zetas didn't come from the streets like most gangs. They were born from the Mexican army itself. Elite commandos, trained in the art of killing, sniping, explosives, counterinsurgency tactics. These were men built for battle. But instead of fighting enemies of the state, they became the state's worst nightmare. Back in the late 1990s, the Gulf Cartel decided they needed muscle, real muscle. So they recruited defectors from Mexico's most elite Special Forces unit, Grupo Aeromóvil de Fuerzas Especiales. Soldiers trained by the U.S. military, men who knew how to take down entire squads in minutes. That's how Los Zetas were born, not as drug dealers, but as professional killers for hire. But killers don't stay employees for long. They realized they didn't need the Gulf Cartel. They could be the cartel. And that's exactly what happened. By the early 2000s, Los Zetas broke away and started carving their own bloody path across Mexico. Their strategy? Terror. Not whispers in back rooms, not quiet bribes, but open, public, merciless violence. Rival gang member beheaded in broad daylight. A police officer refusing to cooperate. Strung up from a highway bridge with a sign pinned to his chest. This is what happens when you betray Los Zetas. Ordinary citizens, innocent or not, didn't matter. Whole towns were wiped out just to prove a point. They didn't just traffic cocaine and meth. Los Zetas had their hands in everything. Human smuggling, kidnapping, extortion, even stealing oil directly from government pipelines. Think about that. They didn't just rob banks, they robbed the entire nation. Billions of dollars flowed into their pockets while Mexico bled. By 2010, Los Zetas controlled nearly half of Mexico's drug trade. From the Texas border to Central America, their shadow loomed. They even expanded operations into Guatemala, Honduras, and beyond. Their soldiers were so feared, entire police forces either fled or flipped sides. Politicians, judges, mayors all had to play by Zetas' rules or face execution. And they weren't subtle. Los Zetas wanted everyone to know they ruled by fear. They posted videos online of gruesome killings. They left dozens of bodies piled up on roadsides. They massacred 72 migrants in San Fernando, men and women who refused to work for them. This wasn't just crime. This was terror, designed to paralyze a nation. The Mexican government declared all-out war on them, and rival cartels like Sinaloa joined in the bloodbath. Entire cities turned into battlegrounds, helicopters, military convoys, shootouts in the streets. It looked like Iraq or Afghanistan, but it was Mexico. Today, Los Zetas are fractured. Some leaders are dead, others captured. But their legacy remains. The violence they unleashed reshaped Mexico's underworld forever. Every cartel war, every massacre that follows, it all carries the fingerprints of Los Zetas. They weren't just gangsters, they were soldiers gone rogue. And they proved that when you train men to kill without fear, you better pray they never turn on you. Because Los Zetas didn't just want power, they wanted to own fear itself. Number 9. PCC. São Paulo, Brazil, the land of samba, football, and the most powerful prison-born criminal organization in Latin America. Meet the PCC, Primeiro Comando da Capital. Unlike flashy cartels with golden guns and flashy cars, the PCC built their empire in silence, behind prison walls. In 1993, a handful of inmates inside São Paulo's brutal Carandiru Penitentiary decided they were done being victims of the system. The state controlled their bodies, but the PCC would control everything else. What started as a prison gang quickly became a shadow government. Their motto? Peace, justice, and liberty. But make no mistake, that peace was bought with blood. The PCC did what politicians in Brazil couldn't. They organized. They established strict codes of conduct. They taxed drug dealers, enforced order inside overcrowded prisons, and punished anyone who stepped out of line. Step wrong, and you weren't just punished. You were executed, often with terrifying brutality. And then came 2006, the year the PCC showed the entire country who was really in charge. From their cells, PCC leaders ordered coordinated attacks across São Paulo. Banks were bombed, buses set on fire, police officers gunned down in the streets. For days, Brazil's biggest city, a city of more than 12 million people, was paralyzed by fear. The government thought they controlled the prisons. But in reality, the prisons controlled the streets. Unlike Los Zetas, the PCC didn't thrive on chaos. They thrived on order, their order. In Brazil's favelas, where poverty and violence ruled daily life, the PCC stepped in as judge, jury, and executioner. They offered loans, settled disputes, and provided justice when the state was nowhere to be found. To the poor, they looked like protectors. To their rivals, they were merciless executioners. Their money comes from the usual business: cocaine routes from Bolivia, Peru, and Colombia, flowing through Brazil to Europe and Africa. Billions in profit. But their real power is discipline. Every member follows a code, pays dues, and obeys leadership without question. Break the code, and you don't get a second chance. And here's the scary part. Unlike many other groups, the PCC rarely kills innocents for spectacle. They're strategic. Every act of violence has a purpose: to send a message, to keep order, to expand control. That's why they've survived for decades, while flashier cartels have burned out. Today, the PCC is believed to have tens of thousands of members, both inside and outside prison walls. They control drug routes across half of South America. They negotiate with other cartels as equals. They bribe police, infiltrate governments, and silence journalists. In Brazil, people say the government controls the country by day, but the PCC controls it by night. Number 9 on our list, but make no mistake, if the PCC wanted, they could turn Sao Paulo into a war zone again tomorrow. And no one, not the police, not the army, not even the president, could stop them. Number 8. Yakuza. The Yakuza, the most infamous crime syndicate in Asia. Forget the Hollywood cliches about katana-wielding gangsters in kimonos. The real Yakuza are something far stranger and far more dangerous, because in Japan, the Yakuza were never truly underground. For decades, they operated in plain sight. They had headquarters with neon signs, business cards, and even office hours. They were organized crime, disguised as corporate Japan. The roots of the Yakuza go back centuries to the wandering gamblers and street peddlers of feudal Japan, outcasts who lived on the edge of society. They developed their own codes of loyalty, ritual tattoos to mark their bodies, and brutal punishments for betrayal. Over time, these outcasts evolved into something far bigger, the Yakuza, a network of syndicates that would come to dominate Japan's underworld. By the 20th century, the Yakuza weren't just gangsters, they were power brokers. They ran gambling, prostitution, loan sharking, drug trafficking. They extorted businessmen, infiltrated politics, and even struck deals with the Japanese government during the Cold War. In the shadows of Tokyo's skyscrapers, the Yakuza quietly turned vice into empire. And they weren't shy about showing it. Members were covered head to toe in full-body tattoos, dragons, koi fish, gods of war, a badge of honor, but also a warning. Cross me, and you'll regret it. Their punishments were ritualistic. If you failed your boss, you didn't just get fired. You cut off your own finger, piece by piece, until your debt was paid in flesh. But here's the strangest part. For decades, ordinary Japanese citizens actually tolerated the Yakuza. Why? Because in a twisted way, they provided order. They kept petty crime off the streets. They punished thieves and rapists when the police looked the other way. And in times of disaster, like the Kobe earthquake in 1995 or the tsunami in 2011, it wasn't the government handing out supplies first. It was the Yakuza, driving trucks of food and water into ruined neighborhoods. Criminals, yes, but also, in their own way, guardians. At their peak, the Yakuza had over 180,000 members. They owned banks, real estate, construction companies. They invested in movies, technology, even the stock market. They became so embedded in Japanese society that some called them the country's second government. But in recent years, the picture has changed. Japan cracked down hard. Laws were passed to choke their businesses. Police raided their offices. Membership plummeted. Today, it's estimated the Yakuza are down to around 25,000. Still large, but a shadow of their former self. Yet here's the truth. The Yakuza may look weaker on paper, but their influence runs deep. Their money still moves through banks in Tokyo. Their connections still touch politicians and corporations. And their legend, the fear they inspire, is alive and well. Number 8 on our list, not just a gang, not just a syndicate, but a criminal empire that blended tradition terror and respect into something uniquely Japanese. The Yakuza, the world's most visible and yet invisible mafia. Number 7. Russian Mafia. They call it Bratva, the Brotherhood. But don't let the name fool you. This isn't some romantic code of honor. It's a sprawling empire of crime that was born in Soviet prison camps and raised in the chaos of a collapsing superpower. In the gulags, tattoos told your life story. A cross on the chest meant authority. Stars on the shoulders, untouchable. These weren't just markings. They were the first passports of a criminal aristocracy that would one day inherit an empire. When the Soviet Union fell, millions were starving. Industries were collapsing and entire states were up for grabs. Guess who stepped in? The Bratva. They weren't just stealing cars and smuggling vodka. They were privatizing whole industries. Oil, gas, steel, fortunes worth billions were carved up in backroom deals soaked in blood. And here's what makes them different from any other mafia on this list. They don't just operate in one country. They are everywhere. In New York, they flood the streets with heroin. In Miami, they launder money through nightclubs. In Spain, they buy entire neighborhoods to hide their wealth. In London, they walk into banks wearing suits, not masks. The Solntsevskaya Brotherhood alone, the biggest and baddest of them all, has been called the world's largest criminal organization. Intelligence reports say their yearly revenue runs into the hundreds of billions. That's more than some Fortune 500 companies, more than the GDP of small nations. Think about that. But what's scarier than their money is their protection. Former KGB agents, corrupt ministers, oligarchs with private armies. In Russia, many say the Bratva isn't outside the state. It is the state. The line between politics, business, and organized crime, completely erased. Unlike Latin American cartels, the Russian Mafia doesn't need to spray bullets in the street. Their favorite weapon is silence. Assassinations that look like accidents. Politicians who suddenly change sides. Journalists who stop asking questions. And in the digital age, they've gone global. Cybercrime rings tied to the Bratva have hacked banks, corporations, even governments. Billions vanish with a few keystrokes, and the fingerprints are buried deep in the code. From heroin routes to human trafficking, from Wall Street frauds to cyber heists, the Russian Mafia isn't just in the shadows. They're inside the system itself. Invisible, untouchable, inevitable. That's why the Bratva, this ghost empire born in prison tattoos and raised on blood money, earns the 7th place on our list. Number 6, MS-13. MS-13. 2 letters, 2 numbers, and a reputation that sends chills through entire communities. Born in Los Angeles during the 1980s, Mara Salvatrucha was originally just a gang of Salvadoran immigrants trying to survive in a hostile city. But survival turned into violence. Violence turned into a creed. And soon, MS-13 became a name whispered with fear on both sides of the border. Their trademark, brutality, pure theatrical brutality. While other gangs kill to send a message, MS-13 kills to carve their name into memory. Beheadings, burnings, torture that looks like something out of medieval nightmares. To them, fear isn't a byproduct, it's the product. Today, their network stretches from the barrios of El Salvador to the streets of Washington, D.C. and New York. The FBI calls them the most dangerous street gang in America. And here's the catch. They're not just some street thugs with tattoos. They are organized, disciplined, and connected to international drug cartels. Cocaine from Colombia, meth from Mexico, weapons from the black markets of Eastern Europe, all flowing through MS-13 pipelines. But drugs aren't their only business. Extortion is their daily bread. Entire neighborhoods in Central America pay rent to MS-13 just to survive another week. Small businesses, bus drivers, even school teachers, no one is off limits. Refuse to pay, and the bodies show up fast. Sometimes left in the streets, sometimes hacked apart as a warning. What makes them terrifying is their code. Once you're in, you don't get out. Initiations often include violent crimes, even murder. And betrayal? That's punished with a death so gruesome, it becomes folklore. Governments have tried everything. Military crackdowns, mass arrests, even negotiating in secret. But MS-13 feeds on chaos. The more prisons are filled, the more the gang recruits. Behind bars, they're not weakened, they're in command. Whole prisons in El Salvador and Honduras have been described as MS-13 headquarters, where orders go out like from corporate boardrooms. And then there's the image. Tattoos crawling over faces, skulls, demons, numbers. It's not fashion, it's intimidation. Walk into a neighborhood marked with MS-13 graffiti, and you're entering their kingdom, a place where the law doesn't matter. Here's the dark truth. MS-13 isn't the largest criminal syndicate in the world. They don't move the billions like the cartels or the Bratva, but their power lies in terror, pure, raw terror. Parents in El Salvador tell their children, obey, stay quiet, don't look at them. In America, whole suburbs live in fear of their reach. Politicians use them as the face of crime. And for once, the headlines aren't exaggerating. MS-13 is more than a gang. They are a nightmare that crossed borders, a force so savage it's been called the most violent gang on earth. And that's why Mara Salvatrucha takes 6th place on our list. Number 5. Triads. They are not just a gang, they are a tradition, a brotherhood that traces its bloodlines back to ancient China. They called themselves the Triads. And for centuries, their name has meant one thing: power in the shadows. The legend says the Triads began as secret societies fighting against corrupt emperors in the 17th century. But what started as rebellion quickly twisted into something darker. By the 20th century, the Triads had transformed into one of the most feared criminal organizations on the planet. Their base? Hong Kong, a city where skyscrapers gleam like gold, but alleys still run with blood. Here, groups like the 14K and Sun Yee-on rule entire districts. Their control is so deep, locals often say, the police own the day, the Triads own the night. Their empire is vast. Drugs, weapons, human trafficking, gambling, extortion. If there's money, the Triads are already there. They move heroin from the Golden Triangle jungles of Southeast Asia. They run underground casinos in Hong Kong, Macau, and beyond. They traffic women and children across borders like cattle. And unlike other groups, the triads don't just operate in Asia. They've gone global. London's Chinatown, Vancouver, Sydney, New York, all have felt the cold hand of the triads. FBI reports have tied them to meth shipments in California. Australian police have linked them to massive money laundering schemes. In Europe, they've been caught moving counterfeit goods on an industrial scale. But what makes the triads terrifying isn't just their crimes, it's their structure. Oaths, rituals, coded handshakes, ancient ceremonies. New members swear loyalty in blood, candles, and chants. To betray the triad isn't just breaking the law, it's breaking a sacred vow. And the punishment is as brutal as you'd imagine. The numbers are staggering. Estimates put the triad's membership in the tens of thousands. The 14K alone is believed to have more than 20,000 members worldwide. That's not a gang, that's an army. And while Hollywood paints them in neon lights and kung fu duels, the reality is far more sinister. Imagine a world where your local restaurant pays protection money, where every nightclub is under surveillance, where every politician has a shadow sponsor. That's the triad's world. Invisible, yet everywhere. Governments have tried to crush them for decades. Crackdowns in Hong Kong, raids in Macau, Interpol operations across continents, and yet the triads survive. They adapt, they evolve, because their real weapon isn't guns or knives, it's loyalty, silence, and fear. The triads are not the loudest, not the bloodiest, but they are eternal. An ancient brotherhood that turned crime into culture and culture into empire. And that's why the triads hold 5th place on our list of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the world. Number 4. Camorra. Naples, a city of sun, pizza, and music, but behind the postcard, a war zone? This is the kingdom of the Camorra, one of the oldest, bloodiest, and most unpredictable mafias in the world. Unlike the Sicilian Mafia or the 'Ndrangheta, the Camorra isn't ruled by a single godfather. No, the Camorra is chaos. A hydra with hundreds of clans all fighting, betraying, and backstabbing each other. Today's ally is tomorrow's corpse. Loyalty is temporary. Power is everything. Their history goes back centuries. Born in the slums of Naples in the 18th century, the Camorra started as prison gangs, extorting protection money from inmates. By the 20th century, they controlled the streets of Naples, every market, every shop, every corner. Their business, everything dirty you can imagine, drugs, weapons, counterfeiting, extortion, toxic waste disposal. Yes, even garbage became gold in their hands. For decades, the Camorra has been accused of dumping millions of tons of toxic waste across southern Italy, poisoning entire regions, all for profit. Farmers still dig up drums of chemicals instead of potatoes. But drugs remain their crown jewel. Naples is a gateway to Europe, and the Camorra has turned it into a narcotics hub. Cocaine from South America, heroin from the Middle East, synthetic drugs from Asia, all flow through their ports. And when clans fight over territory, Naples burns, drive-by shootings in broad daylight, bombs in the streets, children caught in crossfire. Here's the terrifying part. The Camorra doesn't just kill, they infiltrate. They own construction companies, restaurants, luxury boutiques. They launder money. through the very economy of Naples, blending crime with daily life so perfectly that sometimes you can't tell where the state ends and the Camorra begins. And unlike the Cosa Nostra, the Camorra doesn't hide in shadows. They flaunt it. Camorristi cruise in Ferraris, wear gold chains, flash designer clothes. They want to be feared and envied. They want every kid in Naples to dream of becoming a boss. Estimates suggest the Camorra earns tens of billions of euros every year. That makes them one of the richest mafias in Europe. And despite endless police crackdowns, despite arrests of top bosses, despite dozens of clans being wiped out, the Camorra always survives. Why? Because it's not a pyramid, it's a swarm. Cut off one head and 10 more rise up. Naples is a city where you can feel their presence in the air. Walk down the wrong street and you'll see it. The tattoos, the soldiers on scooters, the lookouts at every corner. Ordinary people whisper, "La Camorra commands." The police just follow. The Camorra isn't just organized crime. It's disorganized terror. A never-ending civil war dressed up as a business empire, and it's that mix of chaos, brutality, and wealth that makes them one of the most dangerous mafias on the planet. That's why the Camorra takes 4th place on our list. Number 3, CJNG. Cartel de Jalisco Nueva Generación, which means in translation, Jalisco New Generation Cartel. The cartel that rose from the shadows and rewrote the rules of the Mexican underworld. If the old narco bosses hid behind family ties and political favors, CJNG came with a new logic: maximum expansion, insane brutality, and a public display of power. They're not just drug traffickers, they're a political and military machine, born out of a country where the state has lost control over its own land. The story is simple and terrifying. A young, ambitious leader, Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, known as El Mencho, managed to rally money, experience, and ruthless fighters around him. CJNG grew out of a faction in Jalisco and in just a few years seized control of key smuggling routes, distribution corridors, and massive production hubs for meth and fentanyl. They don't just sell poison, they manufacture it at home, guarding their labs with private armies. But CJNG's real power lies not just in chemicals and cash, it's propaganda and terror. Forget whispers in the dark. They upload videos. Forget discreet messages. They flood social media with footage of burning vehicles, armed parades, and executions staged like terrorist spectacles. Their violence is theater, designed to terrify entire cities. And when people see their convoys with armored trucks, drones, and heavy weapons, they stop believing in the government. That's their greatest victory. CJNG's strategy is pure offense. They storm cities, set up blockades, ambush police convoys, and claim highways like military operations. Their strike teams operate like special forces, with coordination, intel networks, and infiltrators inside the very police meant to hunt them. No wonder El Mencho has long been one of the most wanted men in the world, with millions in bounties offered by the U.S. and Mexico. But this isn't just one man. It's an entire chain of commanders, cells, and global connections. Their economy is vast. Yes, drugs, meth, cocaine, and increasingly fentanyl. But that's just the surface. They run extortion rackets, human trafficking, arms smuggling, kidnappings, highway cargo hijackings, and launder money through restaurants, construction firms, shell companies, even crypto platforms. The profits? Millions per month, billions per year, and they reinvest it all into bribes, firepower, and expansion. The real cost is human. Entire towns live under fear. Shop owners pay tribute or disappear. Journalists get silenced. Police officers live under the gun. CJNG enforces one rule: either you're with them or you're dead. Their system rots communities from the inside out, erasing trust in any authority outside the cartel. And then there's the global side. CJNG runs supply chains with chemical precursors from Asia, cocaine from South America, and smuggling routes into the US and Europe. Their logistics are international, a web stretching across continents. That's why experts call them not just a Mexican cartel, but a transnational threat. But here's the paradox. Their obsession with fear and spectacle makes them powerful but also vulnerable. Every video, every armored convoy, every massacre draws global attention, from DEA agents to military task forces. And yet, as long as CJNG keeps its money flowing, its soldiers armed, and its networks alive, it will remain one of the most dominant, terrifying criminal organizations in the world. That's why CJNG takes the number 3 spot on our list, because this isn't just a cartel. It's a modern hybrid monster, part army, part corporation, part terror machine. And until they're dismantled, their shadow won't just hang over Mexico, it will haunt the global underworld. Number 2. Sinaloa Cartel. The Sinaloa Cartel, the so-called Coca-Cola of cartels. If there's a brand name in organized crime, this is it. For decades, they've been the kings of cocaine, heroin, marijuana, meth, and now fentanyl. And unlike the chaos of CJNG, Sinaloa built their empire on strategy, patience, and corruption at the highest levels. At the heart of their legend stands one name: Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the man who tunneled out of prison not once but twice, the folk hero who made Forbes' billionaire list, the ruthless kingpin who became the face of Mexican drug trafficking. But make no mistake, Sinaloa is much bigger than El Chapo. It's a machine, a network of bosses, families, and soldiers spread across Mexico, the US, and the globe. Their genius? Logistics. While other cartels made noise with violence, Sinaloa quietly built pipelines. Underground tunnels under the U.S. border, semi-submersible submarines crossing oceans, jets, fishing boats, cargo containers. If it can move, they've used it. They turned drug trafficking into a science of supply chain management. That's why DEA officials once said, Sinaloa is Walmart. Everyone else is a corner store. But their empire isn't just about smuggling drugs, it's about politics and corruption. The Sinaloa cartel has been accused of paying off governors, police chiefs, generals, and even federal officials. Bribery isn't an expense for them, it's an investment. In many towns, their protection is more reliable than the state itself. The money? Staggering. Estimates suggest Sinaloa's annual revenue peaked at over $3 billion. But that's just what law enforcement could trace. The real figure could be far higher. They control cocaine routes from Colombia, heroin from poppy fields in Mexico, fentanyl labs producing doses for the U.S. market. And every year, overdose numbers in America remind us Sinaloa isn't just a cartel, it's a public health crisis disguised as a business empire. But let's not romanticize them. Behind the Robin Hood myth of building schools and handing out food in Sinaloa villages, there are massacres, executions, and families destroyed. Thousands of lives have been claimed by cartel violence, whether through turf wars with rivals like CJ&G or through the addiction epidemics fueled by their drugs. And yet, despite arrests, betrayals, and El Chapo himself rotting in a U.S. Supermax prison, the cartel survives. Why? Because it's decentralized. Today, leadership is fragmented between Chapo's sons, known as Los Chapitos, and old guard figures like Ismael El Mayo Zambada, a ghost-like boss who's managed to evade capture for decades. This balance of young blood and veteran cunning keeps Sinaloa alive, even as rivals try to tear them down. The paradox is clear. The Sinaloa cartel is not the loudest, not the bloodiest, but it's the most resilient. While others rise and fall, Sinaloa remains, an empire that adapts, infiltrates, and spreads from Mexican mountains to American suburbs, from European ports to Asian markets. That's why Sinaloa takes number 2 on our list, because if CJ&G is chaos, Sinaloa is order. And sometimes order is far scarier. Number 1. Ndrangheta. And here we are, the most powerful, the most secretive, and, for many experts, the most dangerous criminal organization in the world. Forget Hollywood's Cosa Nostra. Forget the flashy cartels of Mexico. The real kings of global crime wear silence like armor. This is the Ndrangheta. Born in the rugged hills of Calabria, southern Italy, the Ndrangheta was once dismissed as just another regional mafia, poor, rural, backward. But while the world was busy chasing Sicilian godfathers, the Calabrians quietly built an empire. Today, they control up to 80% of Europe's cocaine trade. Their strength lies not in chaos, but in blood. Unlike other mafias, the Ndrangheta is built on family ties so tight, they are nearly unbreakable. Sons, brothers, cousins, entire clans bound by blood oaths and rituals that outsiders can't penetrate. Betrayal is almost impossible. Infiltration nearly hopeless. For law enforcement, it's like chasing ghosts. And ghosts they are. You won't see Ndrangheta bosses flaunting gold chains or posting videos online. They live in shadows, hidden behind businesses, investments, and offshore accounts. They pour billions into real estate, restaurants, ports, even the stock market. Their money is everywhere, and yet they themselves are invisible. Their reach is global, from South America's coca fields to Canadian ports, from African smuggling routes to Australian cities. Their annual revenue, more than $60 billion, bigger than McDonald's, bigger than many Fortune 500 companies. And yet, most people outside Italy don't even know their name. That's their greatest weapon, anonymity. So, here's the truth. The most dangerous mafia in the world is not the one you see on screens, but the one you don't see at all. And that's why the Ndrangheta takes the number 1 spot on our list. Silent, invisible, untouchable. The true rulers of the underworld. And if you want to keep exploring the real stories behind the world's most feared criminal empires, don't just disappear into the shadows. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and join us. Because here, we tell the stories Hollywood is too scared to touch.